And welcome to Awakening Through Love, the podcast. My name's Rod Gordon.
And my name's Martina Hughes. Today we're going to be exploring the effect of awareness in intimate relationships. So, big, broad topic, but we're going to follow up on some things that have been particularly alive in the conversations with our community recently. So, before we go any further, can you define what we mean when we say awareness?
Yeah, when we're using the word awareness, it's the display of consciousness through the body and a person's capacity to embody and allow that to come through in a way that it's experienced by another.
Mm. So, can you give a specific example of how somebody can cultivate or develop that sort of awareness?
The fastest, most effective way to cultivate awareness is meditation.
Mm,
Yeah,
mhm,
meditation and the breath.
mm. And so, let's say for people who are going, oh, I wonder if I'm aware in my relationship. Oh, is my partner aware in our relationship? If people are having that question or they're wondering how they can feel or notice awareness in a relationship, what would you say to them?
The answer is no.
So, what would they need to do to begin?
That answer goes for me too. That there's no end to
Mm,
becoming aware.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
not a destination or a goal.
mm,
It's something that continuously reveals itself to ever more subtle layers of our humanity.
mm,
So the journey to becoming aware doesn't end.
mhm,
The fact that if I even considered myself to be aware
mhm.
and I didn't need to work on it, then I've totally missed the point.
Yes, yes.
Then I am basically locked at that moment into a belief that I no longer need to become aware of that which I'm not aware of.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think that's a great idea for anyone.
So, for somebody who hasn't meditated, who hasn't cultivated presence or awareness,
Mm.
then what might be some clues that they need to meditate or start developing awareness?
Yeah. So if we're looking for internal cues, it's we can measure it by whether or not we're reactive. It's a
Mhm,
great place to start. If there's emotional reactivity in our body, we're certainly not aware and we're
mm,
certainly not present in that moment.
mhm,
There's a lot of permission in our culture to be reactive, to
mhm,
react to our emotions, to be offended or whatever the thing is at the time.
mhm,
But that permission, in some ways, it's a really beautiful thing. Like, I think it's one of the more beautiful things that's come out about, through social media. Like, keyboard warriors are so ready to be proactively aggressive. They're ready to react. And the permission for that in the online space, in many ways, is allowing what's always been there to come to the surface.
mm,
It's creating an opening. So something that we can see that's already in us as humans is getting flushed to the surface to make it
mm,
really obvious. So the first place that I would begin is with my own reactivity. So my
mm,
own emotional response to something. And if there's any kind of drama, blame, shame, reactivity, sort of
mm.
energy in it, then there's something I'm not aware of.
And I would add to that, like even a sense of internal collapsing in on oneself is also that reactivity playing out.
Yeah, it is. So, like, it's quite common for people if they're hurt or they believe they carry some kind of wound. Like,
Mhm,
I hear of, like, I have an abandonment wound, I have
mhm,
a trauma wound, I have some kind of wound
mhm,
that I carry. That belief gives people permission to collapse into that
mm,
feeling and to become it. When we do that, our attention actually turns inwards
mhm,
on our own body, and then we're actually not even aware of the people around us, how
mm,
we're impacting them, how we're impacting the moment.
mhm,
We have no idea in that moment of the hurt and the damage that we cause others and the division
mm,
and separation that our selfish attention turning inwards creates for other people.
Mm.
And so it's definitely, emotional collapse, collapsing into an emotional state of being is definitely a form of reactivity.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, it's
So,
not just an exploding out. It can even be quiet withdrawal, saying
mm.
nothing,
Mhm.
withdrawing love, withdrawing our body, our physical presence. We might go off into another room or into another space.
Mm.
It's another form of emotional reactivity. It just says, I'm so uncomfortable. I can't stay in this moment with you. So my
Mm.
reaction to the feelings in my body is that I need to leave.
Yes.
So it's another form. Like emotional reactivity doesn't have to do just the loud extrovert type
Yes.
people, which I qualify as.
So, in an intimate relationship, the lack of awareness could show up as conflict, fighting, separation, uh, lack of intimacy, lack of feeling connected.
Yeah, lack of sex,
Yeah.
any of those things. If those
Mm.
things are missing, there's something we haven't seen. There's
Mm.
something that we believe to be true that isn't true that's
Hmm.
happening in that moment.
Yeah.
And that belief will drive thoughts that the moment should be different or the person should be different
Hmm.
and that we should feel different. And all
Mm.
those beliefs cause suffering. They cause
Yes.
hurt and pain. But the fact that we're not aware those beliefs are sitting there, we can't even begin to, dig down to what's driving the emotional responses and reactions.
Mm. Mm.
And we also have to become aware of the feelings in the body we're actually reacting to.
Yes.
And where do they come from? What do they really mean?
Hmm.
What sits under those feelings? What thoughts, what other feelings, what other beliefs
Hmm.
sit under there that cause us to go into some kind of state of creating division or separation?
Mm.
Because the moment I'm, triggered or reactive, I'm going to blame or push away, make the other person wrong. So it
Yes.
creates distance between two people. So
Hmm.
that's what I mean by division or separation or creating a divide. We are
Yes.
no longer as close as what we were in this moment
Mm.
because I believe you to be wrong.
Yes.
And by making you wrong, I push you further away.
Hmm.
So it's the opposite of intimacy, which means literally to be close.
Yes.
And so the feeling of the space or the gap or the distance between two people grows
Hmm.
when we judge or blame or react, when
Yeah.
we don't have the awareness of what's the deeper truth,
Hmm.
what's the more subtle truth that's trying to come through in this moment.
Mm.
So on this journey and this kind of work to awaken, we have to have an incredibly sincere desire to seek the truth,
Hmm.
but it's the sincere seeking of truth without pretense. And
Mm.
so, quite often, in the seeking of the truth, or when our intimate partner is asking us questions about what's happening, often the questions are loaded. They're
Hmm.
designed if I was doing it, it'd be a design that my questions are designed to point out that I'm right.
Mm.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's not a sincere seeking of the truth.
No.
That's the opposite.
Hmm.
It's that's that pretense that's there, that belief that's there, and trying to make the moment and what's happening fit into that and trying to
Hmm.
point that out to someone else. It's such a devious mechanism of control.
Hmm.
It's the opposite of awareness because in that moment, we're trying to shrink that person's experience in their world down into the shape that we believe it should fit.
Mm. Hmm.
And it's essentially it's a very it's a subtle form of abuse.
Mm.
It's
Hmm.
emotionally abusive,
Yes.
which we don't talk a lot about in our culture because so much focus is on physical abuse, and
Hmm.
in many ways rightly so,
Mm.
because it's so devastating, especially men's violence against
Yes.
women. So we don't get a chance in a lot of spaces in our culture to explore the more subtle nuanced forms of
Mm.
abuse.
Hmm.
And so even doing that to our intimate partner, trying to make whatever they're saying, thinking, believing, feeling, experiencing, and shrink it down into a shape that we believe what's happening,
Hmm.
that level of control is a form of emotional abuse.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's born from that lack of awareness.
Mm. Mm. So, what I feel would be beneficial for people listening and watching at this point is for you to describe a little of what your journey with cultivating awareness has been.
Oh, that was a nightmare. So it started for me with, well, it started for me with this work.
Mm,
So it started with, I started way back as a hairdresser in lots
mhm,
of ways. You know, I thought my job was to make people feel beautiful and to be happy and to have a great experience and to walk out feeling more loved, lighter, and happier than when they came in.
mm.
What I didn't catch that I was doing at the time, what I wasn't aware of, is that I was learning to understand women and how they feel, what they think. For me, women make perfect sense. All of it. The messiness, the beauty, the emotional stuff, the irrational stuff, that, you know, all these things that people see as problems make perfect sense to me. Men, on the other hand, don't make sense to me. I'm learning. I get it now, way better than I did years ago. But so I never saw that I was cultivating that awareness. And so then when I started doing this work, I had people asking me questions relentlessly as a participant at events, even overseas, asking me questions about women. What does it mean when she says this? What does it mean when she does that? Why would she do say this and then do that? I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And like they would look at me like, what? How does that make sense? But what I was doing at the time that I wasn't aware of was learning to understand women and relationships. And so, because of that, people wanted me to hold space,
Mm,
to facilitate, teach, coach, do all this sort of stuff. And I didn't feel ready because it was my passion. My passion was to be a student,
mm,
not to teach. I
mhm.
was happy doing what I was doing. Then at some point, my teacher asked me to be a part of a men's group. And part of the thing was that I needed to meditate every day. Now, for me, I didn't know it at this point in time, but I always thought I was just incredibly hyperactive, had a huge amount of energy, that other people were lazy and that they thought slow. But it turned out that I had ADHD. So, in some ways, like my mind was very much like uh, a gymnastic circus clown. It was just like bouncing around all over the place. So having to sit and learn to meditate was torturous. You know, I didn't know that I had ADHD at the time. I didn't get that diagnosis until late in my 40s after the accident. And so I just thought that that's how it was because they didn't have ADHD when I was a kid. It wasn't a thing, you know. So starting to meditate, I could see how busy my mind was. And then when I noticed how busy my mind was, I also noticed how busy it was then throughout the day. It's like, oh, wow, I'm constantly thinking, I'm constantly in my head. As that slowed down, I noticed more that was
Mm,
happening around me. And I was
mhm,
like, ooh,
mm,
this is interesting. Like life's playing out in a completely different way to the way I actually think it is because I'm
mm.
so caught up in my head with all these beliefs and things people are doing that I'm doing, what I should be doing, shouldn't be doing, what other people should be doing, shouldn't be doing, blah, blah, blah. And I had lots of those.
I feel a bit exhausted just listening to it,
Yeah.
and I know I have it as well. So yeah.
Well, it was I would say that, you know, myself is like an elite athlete
Yes.
in its
Yes.
capacity to relentlessly think and to
Mm-hmm.
dance around all these things. And so starting to notice that, I got curious. So like, well, hang on, what else about life am I not seeing?
Mm,
And I was like,
mm,
oh shit,
mm,
could be a lot.
mm,
And then so I kept practicing and like it was like literally torturous, like for me learning to meditate. Like I started with a really simple like breath counting meditation. So it would be like, you know, inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, exhale 4, inhale 5, exhale 4, inhale 3, exhale 2, inhale 1, start again.
mm, mhm.
When I first started, I couldn't get past 1 without already thinking. I'd be like, inhale, 1. Oh, how good was that breath? That was amazing. Oh, so good to breathe deep. And my mind was off at 100 miles an hour. I'm like, shit, I didn't get to 2.
Mm,
So
mm,
there was this, like, it took, I reckon, between 3 and 6 months for me to be able to get from 1 to 5 and back to 1
mm,
again,
mhm,
just once.
mhm,
And I was trying to do this for 5 or 10 minutes.
mm,
And then after a year, I could do it like up and down for my whole 5 or 10 minutes that I was trying to meditate.
Yeah.
Some actually somewhere after that, around the year mark, I actually decided to sit down one day and see how long I could do it for, and I got to an hour of just going up and down without losing my place. And I was like, okay, I feel comfortable now that I've got this. And so I moved on to a different meditation, but that was the start. And so in learning to breathe properly, so learning to belly breathe. And I actually saw something really interesting the other day, which might be interesting to people listening or watching. Is like it was the origins of the word spiritual, and the root of the word. I think it was Latin. The Latin root of the word spirit literally means air, and yule, to breathe. So a person who is spiritual is the one who knows how to breathe. And so the first thing that'll happen is when you get involved with any decent teacher is they'll get you to meditate, pay attention to the breath. And so learning to breathe down into my belly would actually pull my attention into the body. Instead of being up here in my mind dancing like a circus monkey, it actually would pull my attention down into my body. As I become more aware of how I felt, then my body's also like, like the brain's a massive receptor and receiver of data, but so is the body. And so then I started to notice what my body was sensing in the environment, started to notice more of the feelings in my own body, feelings in other people's bodies, things that were happening in spaces that I was in. I started to notice more and more and more. And so as I started to notice these more subtle layers, subtle sensations, emotions, more subtle feelings, each time I could notice something more subtle, my awareness was growing. So awareness and sensitivity grow together. One gives birth to the other, feeds it, nourishes it. So awareness and sensitivity grow together. And it's a really paradoxical experience in a lot of ways, because I become more aware and I become more sensitive. So my desire to react to that gets stronger because everything hurts more. Everything feels more amazing. But as good as the good things get, the bad things, or the negative, what we perceive as negative, all sort of lift with it. And so then there's this real sense of failing, that I'm not getting it right. And so it's an interesting journey. It's really conflicting and paradoxical and ironic. And at the same time, it's so rich and it's beautiful. But it's part of that richness is the pain and the hurt, and feeling all of that, noticing all of that actually releases the suffering from it.
Yes.
And so in a nutshell, that's kind of my journey with that, is that, and that's an ongoing journey that's still happening now.
Yeah.
I'm still curious about what it is that I don't know. It's not even that. It's holding that as a state of being. At the moment that I say to myself or hear myself saying, I know, okay, I'm no longer aware because I'm no longer curious about what's happening. As soon as I've developed any sense of I know, there is no space in my body to become more aware. I am officially shut down. The shop's closed. It's locked. The doors are shut. The lights are off.
Yes.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So it's holding an open curiosity to allow life to reveal a deeper layer of awareness. Has to be embodied. That has to all keep inquiring. Am I certain about this? Am I certain? Am I certain this is true? The belief comes up, such and such is this. Am I certain? Actually, no. So it dissolves. That question will dissolve the beliefs.
Yes.
The hidden beliefs, and allows through curiosity to become more aware.
Beautiful description. Thank you. Yeah. There are a few things that were floating around in my awareness, and they all seem to have just disappeared. Actually, what I do want to speak to, and I'm not sure, where's the words? The words are in here somewhere. I wanted to speak to how our mind is kind of like a dog. So, that if it's
Yes.
if the mind is well trained, it's a beautiful companion, and it can serve us, and it can, be amazing companion in our life. But if the mind is not well trained, then you're kind of like the person whose dog is walking them, and you're just being pulled around from this whim to that whim to that whim. And so what Rod is speaking to about meditation and cultivating awareness, it's the journey of training our mind so it can be a useful tool or a beautiful companion in life that can serve and support us. But the mind's not pulling us around like, oh, I want to go to Bali today. Oh, actually, no, I've got to go feed the cats right now. Oh, actually, I've got to go buy some new clothes. Oh, I wonder what such and such is doing. Like that whole, the mind pulling in many different directions without any sense of internal awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. The mind is very much a tool. And it's about using the right tool for the right job. It's like, I'll often say, people, a hammer's a great tool for building your house. Don't fix your car with it. It's not good for that.
Yes.
And the same as like, a hammer's a tool, the mind's a tool. It also shouldn't be running the show.
Yes.
It's not equipped for it. It's the mind is an aspect of our humanity, just an aspect. It's a facet.
Yes.
It's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the puzzle. It's not a goal. It's not something that we should use exclusively for everything. There's, our physical body, there's our nervous system, our emotional body and feeling sensation, the mind, then there's our awareness. And we want to be able to operate with all those layers active to start to liberate, because the self aspect is primarily constructed in the mind through the thoughts, believing that our thoughts are us even talking to ourselves. But the truth is that the brain will just idle in the background talking. If you can sometimes ask it, like, who are you talking to? No answer. So it's definitely a beautiful inquiry to start to pull on some of those threads and notice the thoughts. But the brain can be incredibly active in the background and we're not even aware of it. And the tricky part about that is that every thought that we have, conscious and unconscious, so even the thoughts we're not even aware we're thinking, every thought creates a feeling in the body. The thoughts are the language of the mind. The emotions are the language of the body, and both are two sides of one coin. One doesn't operate without the other. And so feelings in the body will create thoughts.
Yes.
Thoughts will create feelings in the body. I know I've managed several times in my life. Several's not a strong enough word. I could wake up in the morning and start thinking, and I could be raging with anger before I even got out of bed because I've thought myself into an angry state. Because every thought that I was having was driving these feelings in my body, creating these sensations and emotions and feelings. And I could get out of bed, really angry, and nothing's even happened. Like, I've had it with dreams. I've dreamed that something's happened. I'll wake up furious, or hurting and sad or vulnerable and scared. Like, it's, it can wake up elated as well. But every thought generates a feeling response in the body. This organism is all blended in together. Everything, all the layers crisscross each other and communicate in all directions. And as soon as I have a thought that creates a feeling in my body, the feeling in my body then creates another thought. And then we start down this rabbit hole. And so if we can learn to catch the thoughts, our emotional experience of life begins to change. That's where the reactivity starts to get unwound. Because as we start to become aware of our thoughts, we interrupt them. It's like, oh, I'm thinking, and I wasn't aware that I was thinking. The moment we interrupt that thought, the thought stops, the feeling in the body stops. There's more spaciousness in the body. There's more spaciousness to feel. How do we actually feel in the moment without all this mind-generated content? Like, what's it look like to be a human in the world that's not reacting to all the thoughts in the head with the feelings in the body as we walk around in the world, and can actually start to engage with the world as it is?
Yes.
It's a very different experience of life to start to only be responding to what's actually arising in the moment
Mm-hmm.
versus what's arising because of the stories, the thoughts in our head.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
which is we've referred to it in a few other episodes, but I feel like it's worth referring to here is how beautifully seductive that cycle can be of like,
Mm.
oh, angry thought. Yes, of course that person is wrong. Emotions get all churned up, feel like puffed up because now I'm angry, now I'm righteous. Oh, that person did blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, more puffed up, more righteous, more anger. So it can be such a seductive loop,
Yeah.
that
It's
thought, feeling,
intoxicating.
thought, feeling, thought, feeling. And it can go the other way of like, oh, I'm a bad person. Oh, poor me. Oh, and that collapsing in on self. Those cycles are just so seductive. But what you're saying is the awareness is the choice to interrupt
Mm.
those cycles.
Yeah, because like one of the things I'll look at, it's like, oh, I'm thinking, is this happening right now?
Mm,
Whatever I was thinking about. It's like,
mm-hmm,
no, so it's not present.
mm,
If it's a belief or something coming up, I'll be like, am I certain about that?
mm,
Is that true?
mm-hmm,
Like, and start breaking apart because there'll be a belief that sits beneath the thoughts that's driving the thoughts.
mm,
So, one of mine was believing that people were out to get me. That
mm.
would drive a lot of my experience. So I could be walking down the street. I'd be walking down the street and, you know, it'd be like, if this person attacked me and did this, I'd do this and one of these and do that. It's like, you know, and it's like,
And just, I want to say your hands are moving with the do this and do that. So they're like karate moves or things you've got planned, are they? I just want to tease it out for the listeners.
okay. Yeah, I practiced martial arts a long time ago, but
Yeah.
for like, 10 years or something like that. So there
Mm.
was a strong capacity for that, but I don't feel that I have that now.
Mm,
I would consider myself hard to kill, but not a good martial artist.
Yeah,
Does
right.
that make sense? Like, if
Yep.
you're going to try and kill me, it's going to be difficult for you and I'll make your life hell, but you'll probably get it done.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
you
about where I fit
you
into
have
the
a
scale.
you have a capacity for defending yourself, which is what I saw happening with your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, the person walking down the street could be an 80-year-old granny. It could be a kid. It's like, it could be like, some innocent young woman walking along and like, oh, she tried this. It's just like the mind's not objective. It's just, it's constantly, it was on defense, but there was this belief that people were out to get me. So I started it. So then I'd be like, is that true? Am I certain that person's going to do that? I'm like, nah. Then my nervous system would relax and I could keep walking down the street. But this belief that was under there drove this part of me to look for danger everywhere and to assume that danger was present. And what this did is keep me in a state of fight or flight, or kept my body in a state of fight or flight, constantly ready to react, constantly ready to be aggressive, constantly ready to be angry as a defense to feeling unsafe. I wasn't willing to feel the vulnerability that was in my body. So my reaction to the vulnerability, because of my lack of awareness, was to be aggressive instead of assertive.
Yes.
The evolution of aggression is assertion.
Mm-hmm.
And being assertive is a skill, but being unconsciously and unnecessarily aggressive, not a skill, not a life skill. And so, these hidden beliefs that I'd, cultivated at some point throughout my life for whatever reason, like I don't even have a story that attaches to that, but I just recognize that there was this belief that, people were out to get me. So it was a constant feeling of unsafe and vulnerability driving and fueling. I remember as a young boy realizing at some point that my aggression kept me safe. Like I literally had the thought one day, something had happened at home and I was walking to the front door and I just remember going, I'm going to store up all my aggression and anger in my body so that I can let it out when I need it so that I'll be safe. Like it was pre-pubescent. I was 11 or 12. And I literally remember having that thought as I walked to the front door. And I was just like, I look back at that and it's like, wow, I created some really horrendous moments from
Mm.
that,
Mm.
innocent thought as a child to
Yeah.
what I recognize has kept me safe. Because if I was loud enough, aggressive enough, people would just be like, well, you're crazy and go away and leave me alone, which is what
Mm.
I wanted in the first place, is to
Mm.
be left alone. So
Yeah.
it was really interesting to find these things rooted outside of my awareness,
Mm.
driving my behavior, creating my reality, and creating how other people experience me in the world.
That really, really beautiful share. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Mm.
didn't see any of it,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
which meant no relationships ever had a chance,
Yeah.
friendships, family relationships, everything gets impacted by that.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So the whole of my life experience, when filtered through that lens, gets impacted by that.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But becoming aware of what drove my behaviors allowed those drivers to dissolve.
Mm.
And in that, I can be just curious and experience the moment exactly as it is without all the stuff that I'm
Mm.
content that I'm layering over the moment.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I've seen happen in spiritual circles is that sometimes people will develop awareness ahead of their sensitivity. So, a meditation practice that has people see more clearly but become disconnected from sensitivity and feeling.
Absolutely.
Can you
Yeah.
speak a little to that?
Yeah. I think I've exercised that several times in our relationship and even had a little special name for it. It's when I was a spiritual wanker. Is that what you're referring to?
I wasn't going to out you like that, but
I know you weren't, but I knew where you were pointing. Yeah. So I had a couple of strong experiences at some point. Experience people would call spiritual awakening experiences. And they're really beautiful, but at the end of the day, they're just experiences. They don't mean anything. At the time, I thought they did. I thought, oh my God, I've had this spiritual awakening. I've had this experience. I'm now more aware. There was this part of me that was like, I know more than others because they haven't had this experience. And so as I started to, basically create a self around that, an enlightened self or an awakening self, there's this sense of like, oh, now I'm this. And it's like, oh, yeah. Trap. Trap, which I dove into headfirst. And so becoming more aware in the body feels like seeing more. It's seeing the world from a different perspective. But what happens is that meditative state of awareness feels like an overview of life. It feels like like a peripheral vision becomes sharper, but our vision becomes wider, our awareness becomes wider. And in that, it's very easy to get lost in awareness and lose feeling in the body. And what it is it feels like we're drifting out of the body. So expanding perhaps what we think at the time is spiritually, or what I thought at the time was spiritually expanding, because I've become aware and I could see all these patterns and see all these things that were happening in life and in relationships and in people's bodies and their lives, and seeing all this stuff's great. But if I don't have the capacity to feel with it, it's kind of like letting a child run around with a samurai sword. It's devastating because I'm slicing through stuff that I can see, just creating pain and hurt and anguish in you and anyone else who who I was being a spiritual wanker to. It was mainly you, I think. Sorry, sweet. But there was that, in that disconnection and that lack of sensitivity, there's a lack of awareness of the impact that I'm having on somebody else. There's a lack of awareness that my awareness or what I can see is hurting people. So it becomes really unskillful. And also it's the detachment that's in it is its own form of creating a self. So it's my ego coming online, creating a self from an awakening experience. So creating, oh, now I'm this. And so now curiosity's gone again. So if I am this and I know this, then all of a sudden I know, which means I'm no longer curious. And so I'm back in the same trap that I was always in, that I thought that I'd awakened myself out of, and all I did was just awaken myself right back into it.
Yes, yes.
And so the sensitivity, we have to allow ourselves to be the the best way to say it is of the world but not in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that means to be, a human being with all the feelings and the sensitivities and the hurts and the pain and the feelings, sensations, and this spiritually aware being that
Mm.
allows that awareness to be filtered through the body into life.
Yes.
So there has to be that sense that if the awareness, the awakening awareness, if that's not serving the people around me
Mm-hmm.
and they're more hurt and experiencing less love
Mm-hmm.
because of what I'm experiencing, something about what I'm doing is off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was pointed out to me, not particularly subtly, by you and two of our teachers. And so, and I needed the club on the head. I know what I'm like. So there was this, I can fall into that self-righteous or arrogant space easily.
Mm.
That's a definite fault of mine. So it's something I'm aware of. So, I sat with the hurt and the pain and the discomfort of that, but then coming back into the body also hurt more with the
Mm.
awareness.
Mm.
So there was a part of me avoiding feeling hurt. And I think too, what's really common is that there's a belief that with any kind of spiritual awakening or people that are enlightened, which I'm not, and I'm not claiming that, but I certainly believe I'm walking the path of awakening. That's my intention. Is that there should be an absence of negative feelings or
Mm.
negative experiences. It's complete fabrication and bullshit. It's a projection of what we believe that we'd love life to be.
Yes.
I would love to think that I wouldn't have any suffering. I would love to think that I wouldn't feel hurt or angry or have negative experiences at all. And that's just not real.
Mm.
Like when I think about it, like I've never seen a person live a life and not have those experiences. But yet some part of me believes it.
Mm.
But it's the part of me that doesn't want to hurt, that's afraid to feel, the
Yeah.
part that doesn't want to feel vulnerable. Like there's so many of these things, like to walk through life, to not know what we're doing, to not know who we are, to let go of all aspects of ourselves is excruciatingly vulnerable. It's
Mm.
terrifying to live in that state. It's like hanging on the edge of a cliff constantly.
Mm.
And it's so incredibly overwhelming. But in my experience, that whatever this path of awakening is, it's got nothing to do with anything I ever thought it was
Mm.
at
Mm.
all.
Yeah.
And so it's a total shift in the perception of reality.
Mm.
And that has to include, all of our humanity.
Mm.
And the more aware I become, yes, the less I know, but also the more simple and the more human life actually
Mm.
becomes. And it's like, in the spiritual awakening experience of opening and becoming more aware, there's more aware of the sanctity and beauty of life, the
Mm.
gratitude and the appreciation. Like it comes full circle. So
Mm-hmm.
that our humanity, just being a human day to day and having that experience, is infinitely spiritual.
Mm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
divine,
Mm-hmm.
but only if we can feel all of it.
Yes.
Can you feel the plants when you walk past the plants?
Mm.
Can you feel the sound of the birds ripple through your body when they chirp? Can you feel nature moving and shifting through you?
Mm.
So, like, there's so much subtlety that we learn to feel and experience, that being human in many ways is probably the most spiritual thing we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love how you described that, because there is that sense of coming into the body, coming into the feelings, into all of who we are, rather than that escapist fantasy of like, I'm going to wake up and life will be perfect and everything will be roses and beautiful. And that's not actually where it's at. It's being
No.
available for whatever is here in this moment. And
Yeah.
you use the word curiosity a few times, and curiosity really speaks to that, being open and available for this moment, open and available for what is arising in me, for what's arising in you, for what's happening in the space around us.
Yeah. In many ways, it's curiosity is an invitation
Mm,
into a deeper experience of reality.
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're going to step a little bit sideways, but some of the questions that came up on the weekend in our community calls when we were discussing awareness, there are a number of questions around feedback and criticism in relationship.
Mm.
So let's start with the criticism element first. What's the effect of criticism on an intimate relationship?
It kills it.
Yeah,
It creates distance between two people.
yeah.
So the criticism, it'll cause first a contraction in the body,
Mm-hmm.
which is experienced as some kind of hurt or pain or blame that the other person's saying or doing something wrong
Mm-hmm.
because of the pain that we're feeling. In that, it drives this any belief that we're unlovable or not good enough or the person doesn't love us in some way. All that will come flushing up. So we'll feel all that. So now we feel even further away from our intimate partner. And so it tends to create division,
Mm,
separation, hurt, and pain.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And not to say that's wrong, but also to say that that's also just how it feels to be criticized.
Mm, mm,
Like it's not right or wrong, good
mm-hmm.
or bad. But if someone's going to tell us that, our behavior is somehow not good enough or out of alignment or out of integrity or whatever, that's really valuable to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts it really hurts bad.
And one of the things that I noticed on the weekend people responded to quite strongly was your description of the difference between the alpha and the omega experience of
Yeah.
criticism.
So the alpha or masculine part of a human, man or woman, will grow through three specific qualities: competition, challenge, and criticism.
Mm-hmm.
So the masculine or alpha part of us will want to grow through those parts. It can be, you can see it when it's used skillfully in business. Feedback's amazing,
Mm,
but feedback's another word for criticism.
mm-hmm.
In fact, yeah, I can talk about that, but yeah,
Yeah.
the the value in the criticism, like if we can sit with the intensity of the hurt, the pain, or the discomfort, that if it's in our intimate relationship, our partner's also pointing out a part of us that's not conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a part of me is out of alignment with, you know, who I am as a man, with my values, or where I want to go in the world, what I stand for, you will experience that as pain in your body,
Mm,
as hurt. And so when you share that hurt with me, and sometimes that'll come in the form of a criticism,
mm-hmm.
there's also the opportunity for me to feel that hurt, that pain, and that discomfort, but also to recognize that that behavior in me is what's causing that hurt, pain, and
Mm,
discomfort. It's not hurting because you're saying it, it's hurting because it's true.
mm-hmm.
So there's that layer.
Yes.
So, but in terms of the impact, we need to understand how, alpha and omega grows. And so the omega part of a human, or the feminine part, whether it's a man or a woman, doesn't matter, that will grow through praise.
Mm,
So, for the men out there listening, if you want to create the woman of your dreams, praise the qualities that you love and ignore the ones that you don't.
mm,
Now, this is also true for a man's internal omega or feminine capacity. Praise the qualities that you love, leave the others alone.
mm,
Because if I, if I love it when you say wear a dress,
mm-hmm.
which you're not, that's why I picked it. So I'm not being a shit. But if I love you wearing a dress, I'd say, oh my God, you look so beautiful in that dress. I love the way it sits on your body and the way your face lights up and, with those colors. You just look radiant. I love it. And then if you wore something else, I just wouldn't say anything.
Mm,
But the part of you that loves being loved in that
mm-hmm.
way will want more.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll naturally start to wear more dresses
Mm-hmm.
simply because of that.
Yes.
And then, the love will ripple through my body. I'll share that. And then wearing the other things would slowly fall away.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a really sort of shallow but superficial
Yes.
example, but also it's clear.
Yeah.
And so if we want to support someone to grow, then praise is a beautiful way to do it,
Mm.
because as soon as they start doing more of whatever the thing is, man or woman, then there's less space in life to do more of the other stuff. Like
Mm.
if we do more of one thing, we have to do less of something else, right?
Yes.
So we start to do more of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it starts to create transformation in a really positive way,
Mm.
because now we're loving the person into transformation. We're
Mm.
loving them into change,
Mm-hmm.
not for our own sake, but for their sake. Like if
Yes.
you're walking around more radiant, more full of love, happier, that's a win. Does
Mm.
that make
Mm.
sense? So it's
Absolutely.
guiding it. It can't be done for selfish gain.
Mm.
Like I can't do it because, I can't just say it because I want you to walk around in crutchless lingerie. You know, that would feel controlling and manipulative and
Yeah, my
gross,
gut just did that.
clenched.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it can't be for that. It
Mm.
has to be, for it to be an act of love, it has to be for your sake.
Mm.
If I see your beauty shining through and you want people to see that, then I need
Yes.
to guide your attention that I see it more when this is happening.
Yes.
And so it can't be self-centered,
Mm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we would praise a person in that way to grow.
Yes.
And the alpha or masculine part does grow through criticism, competition, and challenge, but only in the face of someone else's alpha or masculine.
Mm.
And so men can criticize other men. Like if, one of the men in the men's group came up to me and said, "Dude, you're fat. You need to do something about it." I'll be like, "Wow, nasty, but okay, fair call. I can see that." If you did that, I'd be gutted.
Mm.
But in that moment of offering the criticism, alpha to alpha is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but in an intimate relationship, the energy flows. It's
Mm.
fluid. There's no like, there's no set role for you in our relationship as a
Mm.
woman. It can look like anything. It's fluid.
Yes.
So in that moment of criticism, you're actually holding that alpha pole.
Mm.
And the part of me that's being criticized is I'm holding the omega pole, which
Mm-hmm.
means I will immediately feel hurt.
Mm.
Now, depending on my relationship to hurt and pain in my body, I'll either react or I'll sit and feel it.
Mm.
So, depending on our level of awareness, will depend on the level of our reactivity or how we choose, do we use it as an effective tool to grow and transform to something that we weren't aware of that hurts and impacts other people? Well, I'm a yes for that. So, I'm going to lean in that direction. But it would also be equally expected that a person would totally react to it and go crazy as well. So, depending on the person, they reveal who they are through it.
Yes.
But the impact on the relationship, like we need to be really clear. Like if I have anything critical to say to you, I'll be like, do you want me to say something? You might bring something to me. You did the other day. I can't remember what it was. I'm like, do you want me to say something to that or speak to it or share or ask a question or something? And you were like, yes. And so then I was like, I'm not good at subtle, just for anyone who doesn't know me that well. I'm more a direct punch in the face kind of guy, like verbally. So I was just like, I've got something I can share, but it's going to come really straight. Are you a yes for that? And you were like, yes. So then in doing that, I'm creating the space for what's coming is going to feel like some kind of criticism. It's also going to be direct and it's going to hurt. And so then you're aware of that, present for that, and you get to choose if you're open for that or not. So in that context, I'm creating the space and the permission for you to invite me to actually offer, that criticism or that thought or ask the question or whatever it is that's coming up. And so then it will be received totally differently. But that's a very conscious way of creating space to have a very direct conversation about something. But when that's just offered and blurted out, it creates the child with the samurai sword.
Yes.
The person who's reacting to the hurt and pain in their body, criticizing the other. The other person then feels hurt and pain. Now you've got two wounded children who are just going to go nuts at each other and it's going to escalate. It's going to get more and more and more and grow. And it's how we create arguments and fights. And so we can stop creating arguments and fights by being more intentional and specific about how we communicate.
Yes.
And having awareness around the impact of our words. And then how do we bring our gifts skillfully?
Mm-hmm.
Like having the capacity, say, to see and be aware, like I do, of feelings in your body, what's
Mm-hmm.
happening, what I can see happening. That's not a reason that I should just come and just go, hey, you're doing this and you're doing that, and I can see you doing this and you're feeling this and you're feeling that. It's just like abusive.
Uh-huh.
So just because I can see it
Mm.
doesn't mean I should share it.
Mm.
And it's an unskillful and clumsy use of the gift of sensitivity and awareness.
Yes.
So, as we become more aware and more sensitive, it doesn't mean we have skill. That
Mm.
doesn't come with it naturally.
Yeah.
It's like being a child with a new toy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've spoken to it, but I want to come a little bit more directly around when hurt happens in a moment like that in a relationship,
Mm.
in the space of criticism or feedback. What's the journey for the person who receives that? What's their journey to be with that hurt or pain, or how do
Mm.
they how do they how do they stay open in the receiving of those words?
Yeah. The way to stay open is through the breath.
Mm,
So when we're going to react emotionally or there's hurt and pain in the body, there's a real strong sense of it flushing up the front of the body,
mm,
especially for men, but it's true for
mm,
women too. But it's really obvious in men. They'll usually sit with it, sit with it, sit with it, sit with it, explode.
mhm,
It tends to come through, a woman's body slightly differently. But
mm,
so the hurt and the pain wants to rush up the front of the body.
mhm,
So the action or the activity of the breath, like the inhale through the nose into the belly
mhm,
specifically, it stops the speed with which that emotion or that intensity is arising in the body.
mhm,
Now it buys us 2/10 of a second.
mhm.
One of my teachers used to say, it takes 2/10 of a second for the terrorist to take the building.
Mhm,
And what that means is it takes 2/10 of a second for us to go into emotional closure, collapse, and reactivity.
mm,
So the breath, that buys us space.
mm,
And so we won't do it here on the call because it'll go too silent. But if
mm.
people just on their own take a really long, slow, deep breath. I was going to say slong. Maybe that's a word. A slong. No, that's not going to work. A long, slow, deep breath. As long as you can inhale, pause, then exhale as long as you exhale, and then pause. And just notice how long the moment can feel, how much space that we can create through one really long, slow breath. And what that does, that long, slow breath, it creates a bit of space in the body that allows our nervous system to regulate to the intensity and discomfort of the emotions that are arising. And it allows us to feel them rather than react to them. Because just because someone said something that hurts us doesn't give us the right to react. It just means that it hurts.
Mm,
I've never had anything hurt that wasn't true.
mm,
So the reason I'm hurting and wanting to react is because what this person's saying is true.
mhm,
And quite often I can't see that it's true. I just
mhm,
want to make them wrong because I can see all the ways that it's not true.
mm,
And for awareness to grow, I need to be able to see a multiple of different perspectives.
mhm,
So I need to be able to see my own. I need to be able to see someone else's. I'll often, if I'm with somebody and this is coming up, get them to come up with 3 or 4 or 5 different perspectives for that
mm,
situation to increase that person's awareness. Because the moment that hurt and pain comes up, the mind and the body want to collapse around it. And
mm,
when we contract and our vision comes inwards like that, we close down to any other option. So we
mm,
only see our own point of view even more strongly in those moments,
mm,
which creates a bigger reactivity because the other person now is so wrong in our mind.
mm,
So we're pushing them even further away. But in the pushing away of another, we isolate ourselves, which means we feel alone. So again, if there's any abandonment or stuff like that sitting in the body, Now that's coming online as well.
Mm.
So now we're trying to deal with the hurt, the pain, the criticism, the lack of intimacy and the distance, plus our own abandonment and other stuff that's all
Mhm.
getting stirred up by the activity of the moment that we
Mhm.
don't recognize.
Mhm.
And so the breath is the place to start. And just that long, slow breath just allows some space to feel. That pauses the reactivity, allows us to stay in the moment just a little bit longer.
Mm.
And then we might have the clarity of mind to say, okay, ouch, that hurt. And I just need to sit with it for a moment.
Mm. Mhm.
So now we can take the spaciousness that's been created in our body and bring it to the moment as a
Mm.
gift and say, I hear what you're saying. I need a moment to process it.
Mm.
And so, maybe we need a few minutes, maybe we need an hour.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, then we need to ask for what we need. Might be like, hey, I'm hearing what you're saying. I can feel that part of it's true and it really hurts. I need to sit with this before continuing this conversation and I need a break.
Yes.
And we have to be really specific when we ask for a break, that we give a time that we're coming back to it.
Mhm.
If we don't give a time when we're going to come back to the conversation, it's experienced by the other as a power play.
Mm.
It's like, I can't talk to you right now.
Mhm.
And if it's a man doing it, the amiga or feminine partner, their longing for love connection comes
Mhm.
online. No, but I need to talk because I want to get us back to wholeness and
Mm.
oneness. And then he feels trapped and wants to run even
Yes.
further. And now we have another dynamic we're adding to the moment.
Mm.
So what we want to do is be really specific and intentional and be like, feel into the body. It's like, oh, is it 10 minutes that I need to sit with this? Is it an hour? Whatever it is, we say, look, let's come back to this in, it's got to be mutually agreeable.
Mm.
So like 1 hour, and we come back in 1 hour, 60 minutes,
Mm.
not 59, not 61,
Mm.
60. We come
Yes.
back at the exact hour. And then, because otherwise it's that person's not going to trust us to want to have a break again at another
Mm.
time. They're not going to
Mm.
be able to, they're not going to feel safe if we disappear and end up, back in an hour, but we talk a day later, without some kind of communication. That's just, how it happens, so to speak. Then the other person's going to feel lied to, betrayed. And now there's a whole heap of other stories and feelings getting added to what's already there. So we're
Mm.
constantly adding content
Yes.
to, hurt and pain over hurt and pain over hurt and pain. And it just escalates. So deepening the breath, slowing the body down, slowing the nervous system down, that allows our nervous system to process the relationship between that and the feeling body
Mm.
and to
Mhm.
stop the reactivity.
Yeah. And essentially, that's such a beautiful process of awareness and sensitivity to be there right in this moment of recognizing what's there in the body. Yeah. Something that just came up for me is if if there's, let's say, if there's no need for the space, then to stay with that hurt and pain, and even to be able to, if it was me receiving some feedback or criticism from you, and then, because sometimes these things sit in unconscious, I might feel the hurt and ouch, and but at the same time go, oh, can feel this is true, but I actually just can't even track or see how it's true. So
Mm.
so then for me in that moment, rather than defending, which is such an easy habit to stick with the I can't see it, so it's not happening,
Justified violence.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then to be able to go, oh, well, can you tell me how I do that? Can you see or share more about how that's happening?
Yeah.
So
That's the answer to the question you didn't ask. But yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I didn't ask a question. I was
Yeah.
sharing the experience of if I didn't need space in that moment, that's the path I would take of like, oh, asking a question that invited some more input. Yeah.
Yeah. So after the breath, to, especially if you can't see that thing,
Mm.
it's back to the curiosity.
Mm.
Because if someone, like, if I've given you strong feedback, or say you've
Mm.
given me strong
Mm.
feedback, and particularly if I can't see it,
Mm.
that doesn't, going to making you wrong is so destructive.
Mm.
So if I can't see what the person's saying, I'll usually say something like, "Okay, well, can you say a little bit more about that, please?
Mm.
You know, could you give me a gentle example of it? If
Mm-hmm.
that's not strong enough, can you give me a stronger example of it
Yes.
and explain to me how I'm doing it?" As I become curious and ask you a question about it to tell me more about what it is that I'm doing
Mm.
wrong, the body becomes unguarded.
Mm.
There's no need for your body to be defensive anymore.
Yes.
And so, as the body becomes unguarded and I invite you to tell me more,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is there's also no need for you to prove your point anymore.
Mm.
So now there's space in your body for compassion and gentleness and kindness, and the conversation starts to de-escalate instead of escalate.
Yes.
So if I reacted to my feelings and said something to you, yeah, but you do this and you did that and you said this and blah blah blah, and you'd react to that,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would escalate. To de-escalate, we start with the breath. But then if we can see it, doesn't matter. But if we can't, that curiosity will then de escalate the situation because we're inviting that person in to tell us more about their experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there's full permission. And in that moment when we do that, if someone, like if you've criticized me, and then I'd say, tell me more about that, I want to know more, that actually inviting you closer so the feeling of intimacy and closeness gets stronger between
Mm-hmm.
us. But also, in that moment of being curious about your experience, I'm also loving you
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not saying, you've said something, it's clearly hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than making you wrong and pushing you away by telling you to say, tell me more about that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm inviting you closer. So it's an act of unconditional love
Yeah.
because now there's no condition. It's like you can blame me and tell me that I'm wrong, and I still love you and I want to know more. And so it's a way of embodying the state of being of unconditional love and allowing that to bathe the other person who's making the accusation into in unconditional love and inviting them deeper into the experience.
Mm.
And so the curiosity in that place is the segue to love.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love the way you described that. Just going to check on the time. Okay, we're at about an hour. Checking my list. We've spoken about curiosity. One thing that actually I would like to speak to
Mm.
is that element of what goes on for me underneath the defenses. And it's not unique to me, to me, but yeah, speaking from personal experience, when my defense arises, what's going on underneath the defense is the fear of losing love. So if I hear criticism and then I want to defend myself, it's important for me to actually just come in and go, oh, okay, this hurts. And I'm afraid of losing love. So oftentimes, my defense, my reaction comes about because I'm afraid of losing love in those moments. So even to be able to, in the deep breath, soothe myself and bring my awareness of love into my own body, because otherwise I'm going to jump into that defending place. So for people with strong omega energy, it's like that omega part is always terrified of losing love. And I know that's sat for me strongly underneath this defensive energy, this fear of losing love. And so even for me, I've needed to make friends with this fear of losing love, because it's an experience that is so much part of who I am as a woman with this strong omega energy. But instead of reacting to the fear of losing love, to go, oh, the fear of losing love's here. Oh, it's here. I can breathe. I can feel that and open my body.
Mm.
So, yeah, I just wanted to include that fear of losing love. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think it's really beautiful because it's such a big deal for
Mm.
the Omega heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so often the whole world is filtered through that fear of losing love for an Omega being. Yeah.
absolutely it is. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. So that feels like it brings us to the close for today. Do you have anything you'd like to add or anything else?
No, it's been cool.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like a really rich conversation. So I hope it serves people out there to cultivate awareness and to understand more how awareness can make a difference in our lives.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have an awesome day.